Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here at the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing our build of the Estes Black Brant II. In the intervening time, since the last video, I've done basically two things, I guess. I finished with the fins, which of course, shaping them takes just about forever. That's one of those things that I kind of do like while watching a TV show, because it doesn't take a whole lot of focus, but does take a lot of time. Of course, then you're going to be getting sanding dust everywhere, so that's kind of annoying. Be sure you make sure that's okay with the people that you live with before you start sanding on the couch. Anyway, but in addition to that, I did attach these two, which was just a little bit of, you could use plastic cement, but I ended up using crazy glue. And then I used the included fin marker guide business here to put lines on it using the door jam trick. This one is a little bit different from some of the Estes line guides because, it's upside down. If you'll notice that the letters here, the fin lines are all double wide, so this tells you like exactly between what two spots do you need. You don't need to try to center it, which is nice. Alright, so it is now time to start attaching the fins. This will, of course, be a bit of production as it always is. These are fairly wide, so I'm hoping, and there's a lot of space to attach them, so hopefully this will go pretty well. They're going to go all the way back to the base of this. Now I inadvertently drew a little bit onto the plastic boat tail here, but not very much. So I'm going to do my best to center them up until about this point, and then the rest of it's going to be whatever. Actually, I guess before I do that, I do want to draw one additional line here on the rocket before the fins get in the way, and that's to mark off where the launch lugs are going to go. So let's do that quickly. You probably, if you're good at this, if you've done it enough, I didn't label this one as the launch lug, but it's the only single one. And it's also in between, it's closer to any of the other fins than anything else. So to me, that's pretty obvious, it's the launch lug. Anyway, the launch lugs are going to go, there's going to be, 7.5 inches, it says, between this, where the boat tail ends, and up the rocket. It's kind of an odd place to measure. I personally would have started here to measure, but that's apparently not how it's going to work. So, let's find 7.5. 7.5 should be right there. So, yeah, that's fine. That's all the marking I really needed to do. So let's get to the fins. I'm going to do my usual trick here. 2 layers of glue. Just to be clear about this too, it's going to go like this, right? So, and it should be the whole way back. So it should look like this, this for sideways. So the back bit here is going to be on the plastic. The wood glue is not going to hold that. So I don't think there's any, I can put glue on there, but it's not going to do much. I definitely want to get it on this bit though. So that's where my focus is going to be. I might as well, I'll put it everywhere that's going to connect the two, but I'm not going to expect anything miraculous happening right there. Alright, so anyway, a little bit of glue, spread it out with my dowel. This stick probably needs to be kind of trimmed here a little bit because I've got a big old ball of dried glue at the end that is from many applications. This is actually probably not enough glue, but that's fine. Wait about 30 seconds and then we will add the next layer. That wasn't actually a whole lot at all, which is kind of surprising. I think my glue bottle could probably stand to be cleaned out. So this kind of glue, pretty much all the wood glue that I ever bought, it doesn't come with this nozzle. This is a nozzle that I took from like a white glue bottle. The ones that come with the wood glue look like this. They're big, flat, they're wide. I don't like them at all because they're not precise. So I've swapped this out. This is probably like, I don't know, at least 10 years old at this point. So every once in a while it does need to be cleaned. So that's just, the glue is water soluble, so you can just toss it in a bowl or something and let it soak for a while, and that usually takes care of whatever accumulated goop there is. Alright, that might have been a little more glue than I needed on that, but I guess it kind of evens it out. Alright, I'm going to change the alignment here so I can see this a little bit better. This is the point right here where the fin changes direction, so that needs to line up at the back here. That's kind of my focus point. And I'm just going to roll things kind of forward and hope that I got basically in the middle of everything. I'm going to hold everything here, push down. Hopefully when I sanded this, I didn't change any of the, I sanded the base of it to get rid of the burrs. Hopefully I didn't change any of the angles very much. I kind of doubt I did, but it's still something to be a little bit concerned about. I'm going to hold this probably a little bit longer than I normally would, because I know that at least the back bit, the glue is not going to do anything, which is fine. It doesn't need to, I guess. There's plenty of other glue. Alright, let's then check for alignment. The front of it, front of the fin looks pretty well centered. I can see a little bit of black line here. This side I can't see the black line because I didn't put it on quite evenly and the glue spilled out this side more than the other, so I'm going to carefully, I'm going to use my smallest finger, I'm going to try to like brush the glue a little bit. Eventually I'm going to make a fillet there, but I don't really want to do that just quite yet. Last thing I want to do before we move on is make sure that this is perpendicular to the tube, and I'm looking down it and I can see it is very much not right now. It's off by at least like 5 degrees. I think the fin probably is a little bit too far this way. I don't think it's quite centered in that line, but it's pretty close. And I'm just gently pushing from the side here to try to scoot it over a little bit. Yeah, that's, I don't want to risk it at this point. Doing too much. All right. Okay, so good enough. I'm gonna lean the fin against the base of my camera. Actually, it's gonna hold things up there just slightly out of frame. Hopefully, I didn't do anything dumb in order to jostle it, to knock things over. But I do want to keep it upright for the time being to let the glue settle, and I don't want it to completely set, of course, because I have to do final alignments. But I don't need bad things happening, so I want the glue to get pretty well set on that. There are only 3 fins for this rocket, so the process is at least a third faster than if it has 4 fins. So maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, I don't know. The glue will be less set for the final fin when we check final alignment, so that's potentially a good thing, but I would say jury's still out until we get to that point. The bad thing about 3 fins instead of 4 is they're at 120 degree angles, which means that when I start rotating this to put the next one on, it might be down so low that it would be touching the ground. So I'm probably going to have to hold the rocket body tube up off the ground while I do this, which is, you have to do it twice if you have 4 fins, so I'm going to have to do it twice with 3 fins. I guess it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Alright, I'm going to try to go lighter on the glue in my second layer this time. That looks better. And of course, spreading it out in case it wasn't all that even. The goal here is definitely to keep it on the nice flat section too, so we don't want to knock it over the side, like over into here, if we can help it. Alright. I'm going to have to hold this up, so I've got my finger inside the motor mount, and yeah, that happened. That happens. It will sometimes. The glue, I guess, just wasn't set up enough. I'm going to have to deal with that in a little bit, but let's try to get this one on. I'm going to go back to the way that I did it the first time. slid it back there a little bit because I had it too far up. And I'm going to try to work on alignment here while it's still, you know, before anything's really happened here. It looks, I think I did a better job aligning this one than I did the first one. But that certainly stinks that the first one fell off. Variety of reasons why that could have happened. The fact that I have to rotate it to add the next fin is always going to make that a possibility. You could, in order to avoid that, you could make yourself a jig, or you could buy yourself a jig to hold the fins on and keep them vertical. So there are things that you could buy. They're not terribly expensive. Well, I mean, I guess they could be, but like Estes makes one. It's not terribly expensive. I haven't really found it to be necessary to buy such a thing, but you know, maybe you want to give that a try. I don't know. It's certainly up to you. All right, so that's probably enough there. Let's check my alignment. It's okay, but not great. A little bump there to get it in the middle. Smooth off the sides here. Yeah. It looks pretty good. All right. To avoid a repeat of what happened, I'm going to stand this up, which, I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, but now gravity is pulling it straight down as opposed to when I rotated it 120 degrees, gravity was pulling it not straight down, so kind of against the grain. There's a lot of what looked like bare wood here on this first fin, so it's fine. It's certainly possible that all the glue where the bare wood on this is all on the rocket, but I kind of find that hard to believe. I might not have just, who knows, I might not have spread it evenly. That might have been an artifact of the first layer because it wasn't, there wasn't enough glue. I don't know. So I'm going to try to attach this vertically. The downside of that is that you're not going to be able to see much, unfortunately, because it is well outside the range of the camera. The rocket, yeah, it's going to be too tall for you to see. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to just apply the tiniest amount of glue here for my second layer because it's not really a second layer. Technically, I guess it's a fourth layer, but I don't know, you know, like how much glue is where at this point. So I'm just going to repeat the process as if it was my first stab at this. Alright. I am going to go back to where the first fin was, so I need to check the lines. It happens to be this side, and I'm going to do my best to line everything up here. It's a little harder, I think, vertically, but since I'm worried about things flopping off, I don't feel like I've got a lot of choice here in the matter. Alright, so I've got it centered. I am holding it down, count to about 30 or so. Right now I'm also doing that. I can't see if it's perpendicular or not the way I'm holding it, but I can see if it's inside the lines, which unfortunately, like, you can't see any of that. What I do feel is that it feels like it's really wobbly, like I'm not getting a lot of purchase from the glue. And I can also see here that it is not centered particularly well. Yeah, ooh, I just remember the back part. Ooh, the back part just slid down like almost a full inch. Boy, that's annoying. The back part, the glue isn't going to do anything because it's plastic to wood, and wood glue just doesn't work there. So what I really need is the glue to set on the wood to the tube. Alright, I'm taking the pressure off of it now. I'm not holding it strongly anymore. I'm going to check my alignment. It is reasonably well centered, I think, at least at the front. Try to clean up the excess glue, and once I do that I should be able to look and see how well it's centered farther back, and it looks okay. I'm checking perpendicular alignment now, and that's alright as well. Alright, so I'm just going to stand that up slightly out of my way so I don't bump it, I hope, because this would be just an absolutely terrible place to like jostle the table and knock everything down. One thing I want to do, I only did it a little bit because it was hard to see from that vantage point, but I want to make sure that the fins are as far back as they ought to be. And in looking at it, the one I just attached should probably go back a little tiny bit more. So that, I just slid it a little bit. It seems okay. Honestly, I mean, looking at the two ends, there's probably some degree of inconsistency because of how I sanded them to shape the fin. But it does look like the first one, the one that fell off, might be a little bit shorter, which would be a bit of an annoyance, I guess, but you know, what are you going to do? Alright, let's go for the third fin here. Hopefully, I'm going to give this enough time for the other two fins to set up pretty well so I don't have another flopping disaster, but I don't trust that enough to try to attach it horizontally. I really prefer doing it horizontally. I feel like I can see it better, that I'm in better control of everything, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. The fact that the back end of this doesn't get any adhesion from the glue, I think, is a pretty major problem. But there's also not a lot you could do about that. I mean, if you were feeling particularly gutsy, I guess you could just crazy glue these things on, but that is generally a bad idea, because you get, you know, a whopping like 3 seconds before the glue sets, and if you don't get it quite right, well, you're out of luck, and you don't get a chance to adjust the fins to make sure that they are internally aligned with each other. So I would not recommend that, like, for pretty much any reason here. The fact that the back isn't going to adhere very well is just something we can deal with. If we really, really were concerned about strength, I guess we could tack it in, or we could go all out and use epoxy, but we don't need to do that. That would be pretty serious overkill for this rocket, I think. Alright, I probably let this sit a bit longer than was necessary, but letting the glue tack up a little bit before we try to attach it isn't the worst thing in the world either. Second layer is on, which might have been a little heavy again. Let's make sure I spread that out pretty well. Okay. Alright, going for the vertical approach again. This one again is a little harder because now there's two fins that potentially to get in the way. I'm going to try to get the point where the fin changes direction as my guide. And I got it on. Oh, it's drifted. Oh boy, it really shifted there. Alright. Yeah, I was pretty wildly off, and I tried to adjust it, and boy did it shift. So, that'll happen, I guess. Alright, that looks better, but I made kind of a glue mess. There's a good amount of glue in a variety of places where it doesn't belong. Fortunately, I have to put a fillet on this anyway, so it'll cover kind of some of the like quality control issues that I've made, you know, with cleanliness and things, but the larger problem is I want to make sure there's enough glue present to hold things in place. So let's cross fingers on that. Alright, I'm going to check my alignment now. It is still a little off at the front end, so let's adjust that a little bit. The back end looks pretty passable. I can see the black lines that I drew on both sides ever so slightly. I'm going to try to clean up some of the glue mess here. Yeah, That's okay, but not great. Alright, so there's my attachment. You can see I got a little bit of glue off to the side here, but it's fine. Alright, I'm going to let that sit for just a little bit, but not too long. The last thing I'm going to do here before just absolutely walking away from this for an hour or so is, in the instructions there is a fin alignment guide, and it is right here. Now, this is great to have. My mat does have angles down here, which are just off camera, that I could use to check the alignment. But this shadow here is nice to check. But here's the downside. Everything is still pretty wet, which is of course essential, because if it were dry, then I couldn't check the alignment. I mean, I could check the alignment, but I couldn't do anything about it. This rocket has fins that are swept back enough so that the rocket will be standing on the fins when I try to put it down right here. The other problem too is this is printed right into a corner and it's not lying flat, so I can put some heavy objects kind of nearby to smooth things out, to try to make it as smooth as possible, but it's not going to be perfect. Alright, so I'm going to throw a little bit of caution to the wind. I'm going to put fingers underneath here so that I can support some of the weight of the rocket, and I'm going to work on my alignment. Alright, so all the fins ought to fit right into those shadows that are drawn there if I did this right. And they don't, of course, because they never do, not on the first try usually. But, I mean, they're reasonably close. This one's not too bad. I'm aligning off of this one. The one that is down here, let me try to shift this up a little bit, is off by a decent amount, but it's not horrible, and it's still definitely something that can be fixed because the glue has not dried yet. Now you want to be very careful doing this, because right now the body tube doesn't weigh much, but the body tube is definitely pushing down this way, and so the fins are kind of rising up ever so slightly, so we don't want that. I don't want to leave it this way. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to rotate it once to check it again. It's always nice to make sure you don't have, build a bias in by looking one direction and not the other. Okay. Yeah, that looks basically the same, so that's pretty good. Alright, I trust this reasonably well. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to stand it up. Today, the air conditioner is not blowing, nor is the heater blowing, so I don't have too much concern about this getting caught in a breeze and knocked over, which I've absolutely had happen before. If you were concerned about that kind of thing, then I would consider standing it up. So like on a glue bottle like this, you could just put the tube over like that. It'll still list. Maybe it'll list pretty far. Maybe the glue bottle's not the right one. Maybe this paint bottle. It helps. It can lean pretty far and not fall over, depending on what kind of bottle you use, how heavy it is. I think today I will trust that it's not going to flap and fall over in the breeze, so we'll go with that. Alright, that was fun. There are a couple minor things that need to be done in construction before we wrap it up, and those will come in the next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.